What if the face you show the world is not who you are? There's a version of you that most people know, the version that walks into a room, that introduces itself, that navigates first impressions, new situations, unfamiliar environments, the version that appears before anyone knows your history, your wounds, your private thoughts, your deepest fears, your most intimate needs. The version that people encounter before they have had the chance to know you at all. And that version, the one that arrives first, that shapes the initial impression, that colors every new beginning, is not random. It is not simply the sum of your personality. It is not even, in most cases, the most accurate representation of who you actually are. It is what astrology calls the rising sign. And it may be the most misunderstood element in the entire birth chart, because the rising sign, also called the Ascendant, is not a mask in the negative sense. It is not a false self, not a performance, not a calculated presentation designed to deceive. It is something more subtle and more interesting than that. It is the lens through which you naturally perceive the world, and simultaneously, the face through which the world naturally perceives you. It is the style of your presence before the content of your character becomes visible, the form of your energy before its substance is known. And like all the most important things about a person, it was not chosen, it was given. By the precise degree of the zodiac that was rising on the eastern horizon at the exact moment of your birth. Not the sun sign, which changes every 30 days. Not the moon sign, which changes every 2.5 days. But the ascendant, which changes every 2 hours, which means that two people born on the same day, in the same city, to the same parents, but separated by 2 hours, can have completely different rising signs, completely different ways of arriving in the world, completely different first impressions, regardless of how similar they are in every other way. The ascendant is the most time-sensitive element in the chart, and in many ways, the most immediately personal. In traditional astrology, the rising sign governs several things simultaneously. The physical appearance, not in a deterministic way, but in the sense that the body language, the facial expression, the way energy is held and projected, tends to reflect the ascendant more than any other placement. The style of self-presentation, the default way of entering new situations, of meeting new people, of beginning new chapters, and the filter through which experience is perceived, the particular angle from which life is viewed, the instinctive framework that organizes incoming information before the conscious mind has had a chance to process it. But the rising sign is also something else, something that many astrologers consider the most important function of the ascendant. It is the doorway to the self, not the destination. That is the sun, not the foundation. That is the moon, but the entry point, the beginning of the path, the particular way that this individual life opens onto the world and the world opens onto this individual life. And this is where the rising sign becomes genuinely fascinating, because the rising sign often describes not what comes naturally, but what is being developed through the act of engaging with the world. It is the style of the journey, not the comfort of the starting point. Many people find that their rising sign feels less immediately familiar than their sun or moon. It is something they grow into rather than something they were born expressing, a way of being that the world calls forth from them, that becomes more available and more genuine over time, as life provides the experiences that develop its particular qualities. Aries Rising arrives with the energy of a pioneer, direct, immediate, forward-moving, meeting every new situation with an instinctive momentum that others often experience as urgency or intensity. The world is encountered head-on, as a series of challenges to be met, rather than problems to be analyzed. The first impression is one of energy, of presence, of someone who has fully arrived in the room. Over time, the Aries Rising develops genuine courage, not the absence of fear, but the capacity to act in its presence. Taurus Rising arrives with a quality of stillness and substance, unhurried, grounded, projecting a solidity that others often find deeply reassuring. The world is encountered through the senses, filtered through a natural attunement to beauty, comfort, and the physical quality of experience. The first impression is one of reliability, of presence in the body, of someone who cannot easily be moved. Over time, the Taurus rising develops genuine presence, not as a strategy, but as a natural expression of a self that has learned to be fully where it is. Gemini rising arrives with a quality of lightness and curiosity, quick, adaptable, projecting an intellectual aliveness that others find engaging and sometimes elusive. The world is encountered as a source of information, of connection, of endless interesting perspectives to be gathered and compared. The first impression is one of wit, of accessibility, of someone who seems to know a little about everything. Over time, the Gemini rising develops genuine communication, not just the exchange of information, but the capacity for real meeting between minds. Cancer rising arrives with a quality of sensitivity and receptivity, attuned, protective, projecting a warmth that draws others in while simultaneously maintaining an instinctive guardedness. The world is encountered through emotional atmosphere, the feeling of a room, the emotional undercurrent of a conversation, the unspoken needs of the people present. The first impression is one of care, of attentiveness, of someone who notices. Over time, the Cancer rising develops genuine emotional intelligence, the capacity to hold space for others without losing the self in the process. Leo rising arrives with a quality of presence and warmth, radiant, generous, projecting a natural magnetism that others often experience as charisma or authority. The world is encountered as a stage, not in a superficial sense, but in the sense that every situation is an opportunity for genuine self-expression and genuine connection. The first impression is one of confidence, of vitality, of someone who has fully arrived. Over time, the Leo rising develops genuine generosity, the capacity to shine not to be seen, but because shining is its natural state. Virgo rising arrives with a quality of precision and attentiveness, observant, careful, projecting a quiet competence that others often experience as reliability or intelligence. The world is encountered analytically, through the details, through the patterns, through the small things that most people overlook. The first impression is one of discernment, of thoughtfulness, of someone who notices what is not working and quietly begins to fix it. Over time, the Virgo rising develops genuine service, not as self-erasure, but as the expression of a capacity for care that is both precise and profound. Libra rising arrives with a quality of grace and attunement, diplomatic, aesthetically aware, projecting a natural harmony that others often experience as elegance or ease. The world is encountered relationally, through the quality of connection, through the balance or imbalance between people, through the aesthetic dimension of every environment. The first impression is one of pleasantness, of consideration, of someone who makes the room feel more comfortable simply by being in it. Over time, the Libra rising develops genuine partnership, the capacity for real reciprocity, for truly seeing another without losing the self in the mirror. Scorpio rising arrives with a quality of intensity and depth, magnetic, perceptive, projecting a presence that others often find both compelling and slightly unsettling. The world is encountered beneath the surface, through what is not said, through what is hidden, through the power dynamics and the emotional truths that most people prefer not to name. The first impression is one of mystery, of penetrating attention, of someone who sees more than they reveal. Over time, the Scorpio rising develops genuine transformation, the capacity to go into the depths and return, not unchanged, but more fully alive. Sagittarius rising arrives with a quality of enthusiasm and expansiveness, open, adventurous, projecting a natural optimism that others often experience as infectious or inspiring. The world is encountered as an invitation to explore, to learn, to discover what lies beyond the current horizon. The first impression is one of warmth, of directness, of someone who is genuinely excited to be alive. Over time, the Sagittarius rising develops genuine wisdom, not just knowledge, but the lived understanding that comes from actually following where truth leads. Capricorn rising arrives with a quality of composure and authority, reserved, self-contained, projecting a natural gravitas that others often experience as competence or seriousness. The world is encountered as a structure to be understood and navigated, through its rules, its hierarchies, its requirements for earning rather than simply receiving. The first impression is one of capability, of self-possession, of someone who can be trusted with something important. Over time, the Capricorn rising develops genuine authority, not the authority of position, but the authority of someone who has actually done the work. Aquarius rising arrives with a quality of distinctiveness and detachment, original, observant, projecting a presence that others often experience as interesting or unusual. The world is encountered from a slight distance, with the eye of someone who sees the pattern, rather than just the immediate situation, who is simultaneously part of the group and slightly outside of it. The first impression is one of intelligence, of independence, of someone who thinks differently. Over time, the Aquarius rising develops genuine vision, the capacity to see what others cannot yet see, and to hold that vision with enough patience and courage to actually bring it into being. Pisces rising arrives with a quality of openness and permeability, receptive, imaginative, projecting a softness that others often experience as gentleness or mystery. The world is encountered through feeling and intuition, through the invisible atmosphere, through the undercurrents that bypass rational analysis entirely. The first impression is one of sensitivity, of depth, of someone who seems to inhabit a slightly different reality than everyone else. Over time, the Pisces rising develops genuine compassion, not as a loss of self, but as the expression of a consciousness so open, so permeable, so capable of holding the full range of human experience, that it becomes a genuine source of healing for those it encounters. These are not performances, they are portals. The way this particular life enters the world. And what is most interesting about the rising sign is not what it says about the first impression you make on others. It is what it says about the first impression the world makes on you. Because the ascendant is not just how you are seen, it is how you see. The filter through which experience arrives. The angle from which life is perceived before any conscious processing has occurred. And that angle shapes everything. It shapes what you notice and what you overlook, what feels like an opportunity and what feels like a threat, what draws your attention and what passes beneath awareness. The rising sign is the particular way this consciousness is oriented toward the world, and that orientation, like the angle of a lens, determines what comes into focus and what remains blurred. Which means that understanding your rising sign is not just about understanding how others see you. It is about understanding how you see. And seeing how you see clearly without assuming that your particular angle is the only angle, without mistaking your lens for reality itself, may be one of the most liberating things a human being can do. Because the lens is not you, you are the one looking through it. And in the next video, we will go deeper into the shadow, into the planets that carry the parts of ourselves we would rather not see. The planets that Jung would have recognized immediately. The ones that describe not our gifts, but our wounds. Not our strengths, but our edges. Not the self we present to the world, but the self we have buried so deeply we have almost forgotten it is there. Saturn, Pluto, Chiron, the teachers that arrive not as blessings, but as pressure.